This is the alphabet. And personally, 26 letters is not enough. I think we need a lot more. And people have tried for countless generations to add more or take more away. But in this video, I am establishing the true, official, real best alphabet to ever exist. Starting with our first letter. And trust me guys, some of these letters get absolutely insane, so please stay tuned till the end. So, this is Esh. So Esh is a pretty old letter with a lot of history behind it, and it's kind of used in a couple alphabets. But in 1928, the African alphabet took this Esh and gave it the sigma symbol as its uppercase, and so that's why it looks like the Greek letter sigma. However, for our alphabet, it is going to be making the SH sound. So when you say sh, you would use the Esh, and it's spelled E-Esh. Very useful letter for our first letter, and on to the next one. So next up is this P-looking letter called thorn. Back in Old English, this made the TH sound. And so when you spell thorn, it would be thorn, O-R-N. It's a very useful letter because T and H is very inconvenient to write, let's be real. Back in the day, the printing press, other countries didn't have the thorn, so when we got the printing press, it didn't have a thorn character, so they replaced it with TH or sometimes Y. That's why when you see a sign that says, ye old shop, it was supposed to be the old shop, because the Y was representing the thorn. However, thorn wasn't the only letter that made the TH sound back in Old English. We also had the EV. So it looks like a dumb D, but in reality it's a TH sound. Back in the day, it was interchangeable with thorn for whatever reason. However, for our alphabet, we're using them both. They can't both be the exact same sound, so I'm making them different a little bit. Thorn will be making the softer TH, like in thorn, thump, etc. And the EV will be the sharper TH sound, like the or then. And so EV is spelled E-EV. Ta-da! Next up, we have a letter that I personally invented, although to be fair, the sound is probably in some alphabet somewhere. This is my iteration of it. So this is the play. It makes the sound, the tongue click. Now, like I said, I'm pretty sure there's a language out there that uses tongue clicks and stuff as its language, so I could have probably taken its written alphabet and used it. However, for this one, I'm using my own symbol because I didn't research it enough. However, what context are you ever going to use this in? I'm not entirely sure, but if you ever want to, you can use this symbol, this letter. It's a very useful letter. Going back to Old English, we have the ash. So you've probably seen this character somewhere out there in a random word, and ash is a combination of A and E. It was supposed to be a sound in between the A sound and the E sound, and the sound it makes is like an ash. It makes the A sound. So in cat, it would be C-T, cat. So it kind of gets rid of part of A's functionality, but A still makes the A sound, so, why not? I'm not entirely sure why this character was removed. I probably should have written that down, but let's go to another letter just like ash. So this is the ethel, or the ethel, or uthel, whatever you want to pronounce it. Back in the day, this made sounds like the oo and E and eh. It kind of just made whatever sound people wanted it to. It was kind of complicated. It was used in English and then sometimes in French, and in French it was just way more complicated than it should have been. However, for our alphabet, we are giving it one specific sound, and that is the oo sound, so the double O sound. So in cool, it would be, well, C, uthel, L. So it's now pronounced uthel instead of ethel or ethel, uthel. So welcome to the alphabet, uthel. Let's get into some more interesting letters, shall we? This is the ampersand. Back in the 1900s, 1800s, kind of, a lot of kids in school learned this as the 27th letter of the alphabet. However, it didn't have this lowercase variant. I made that. I know a lot of people, like myself included, write my ampersands like that, so that is the lowercase variant. So when you were singing the song, it'd be X, Y, Z, and per se, and. So it was like kind of and, so per se and so eventually it got the name ampersand because they just merged and per se and into like this one word. So now it's called the ampersand. And I think this is pretty useful as a letter because it's like a symbol for and. Like, why does it gotta be a symbol? Why not just make it a letter? Why would we remove it from the alphabet? I don't get it, but I kind of do because it's a word, not a sound, I guess. But ampersand. Speaking of the ampersand, I have a letter kind of like it that I invented. So this is the ulstha. The is the most common word in the English language. And why do we have to keep writing out the when we could just have a symbol for it like and? So the word ulstha comes from also the, because I didn't know what else to put. I couldn't think of anything like and per se and, so also the was like the best I could come up with. So ulstha, spelled A-L-S, ulstha. Very useful letter, I think. It'll shorten your writing a whole lot, I think. So good luck with it. I do have one final letter though that does combine a word into one letter, and here it is. So this is the athen, and it is a combination of the word then. Why? Well, because I needed a transition word. Basically how this whole thing is structured is a lot of this is English or Latin letters in the middle, then after ampersand there's a bunch of random ones, and before this is some of my own and some random ones as well. And so and then would be a good way to transition in the song to the actual alphabet. And so that's why I did then. Athen is a combination of and then. But I guess you're wondering what the other letters up here at the beginning are. I mean, you have the ABCs. What is this one's first three going to be called? Well, the second letter is one all of you guys requested called the schwa. This makes the sound. Not like a U, it's just like, you know. I don't know why we would need this letter. I mean, I think U does a good enough job, but a lot of you guys commented where's schwa. I mean, it's the most common IPA letter. I think everyone knows what schwa is. And so here it is. It is the second letter of this alphabet. And we're going to be calling it the schwa, spelled S-C-H-W, schwa, the schwa. So it's kind of got a different name now, but not really. Before I get into the first letter, I need to address something I've kind of been doing. Every letter has itself in its spelling, because a lot of the alphabet has that, except for one letter, I should say, W. Where in the spelling of W could you fit a W? Absolutely nowhere. You can make a case for every other original English letter has itself in its spelling. I mean, even H does, because if you really want to get technical, it's A-C-H-E. There's technically an H. It's kind of stupid, but there's an H. And so for W, I hate the name W. It's also too long, even though I've literally had a bunch of other long ones too. So W is now called Wern, spelled W-E-R-N, Wern. So a lot of people in my previous video that I made where I addressed this didn't like the name Wern and wanted me to name it Wyn, spelled W-Y-N-N, because there was an Old English letter that made the W sound called Wyn. However, why would I name W Wyn when Wyn is already a character that exists? And so I looked at everyone's comments and I thought about it. I was like, well, Wern kind of is a stupid name. I like Wyn, but Wyn's taken, so what do I do? So this is Wyn, the Old English letter that made the W sound. Back in the day, the printing press, again, didn't have the Wyn character, so people started using two U's for the W sound. And back in the day, U's looked like V's, so when they had two U's, it eventually merged into this shape of W, which is where we get the name W. Wyn kind of got replaced for literally no reason, because they just didn't have the solid object that looked like it in their printing press. But now it's back alongside Wern, because Wyn and Wern are like the yin and yang, except they both make the exact same sound and they do the exact same thing. Anyways, back to the first letter of our new alphabet. Here it is. Pretty cool, right? I drew it a little stupid, but it's on screen in text anyway, so why does it matter? So this makes the Z sound, and it's called Zhe. It's spelled Z-H-E or J-E. So it makes the Z sound like in vision, where you'd use an S. We use the Z sound quite a lot, so you would use this letter instead of an S. Because why is S making a Z sound? That doesn't even make sense. So now that we have our first three letters of this new alphabet, it's time to show what I named this alphabet. Because it's not called the alphabet, because this is different. Although technically it's the alphabet, it's an alphabet, but I'm renaming it anyway. So this is called the Zeta Schwa, spelled after the first two letters in this alphabet, Zhe and Schwa, the Zeta Schwa. And I'll show the true spelling at the end because there's still a bunch of letters we gotta go through. All right, let's get into some interesting letters, shall we? Like, these are all boring. Let's get into some really cool ones. Up here we have the La, and it makes the sound. Why would we need a sound in an alphabet? I don't know, but here's the thing. How do I spell this? There's no mouth sound for it. And so here is its letter in all of its glory. La. Up next, we have the C with the cedilla. Now this can be used in quite a few languages, but it specifically makes the CH sound in Italian. And so I'm going to be using that variant for this alphabet. It makes the ch sound. So no longer do you have to spell it CH, you spell it with the C with a cedilla. And since we need it in its own spelling, it's going to be called the chur, spelled chur-U-R. Chur. Next up, let's talk about G. Okay, first off, I don't like the name G. I want to call it Gi. So now it's called Gi, spelled G-E-E. Because G, I mean, come on, you gotta make it more iconic, all right? But then we have a variant of G, actually two, but let's go to the first one. So this is the Yog, or the Yoch, or whatever you want to pronounce it. I could not find a straight answer of this. Everyone said it just made the GH sound, which is just G, or it sometimes made the Y sound like Y, but it also makes like the CH sound in Bach. So it would be Yog. So it's a lot of different sounds. You could take any of those. It was essentially G before G came around. I don't know completely why they got rid of it. It was either the printing press or the fact that it looked like the number 3. So it's Yog or Yok. It's just gonna be its own thing. But then we have the other G variant that a lot of people kind of commented. Not a lot, but a couple people did. So this is the insular G, used in the insular script in like really old England and Ireland. It functioned like the Yog and the G did, so it made all the sounds of them, but eventually it was replaced by the Yog when the modern, more modern-ish alphabet came over. I don't know why I'm forgetting my history. So it's technically not even in English, it's insular is what it was from. However, what are we going to use this as? Well, first I have to introduce you to another letter in order to explain it. So this, my friends, is the long S. Now, technically this uppercase variant I made up because its uppercase variant was originally just the S. It essentially was like its own form of S. For this alphabet, it's its own letter. So the long S's only purpose was usually in double S's, but sometimes by itself. Like in the word Congress, if it had two S's, the first S would be the long S. Why? I'm not sure. Since it's in my Zeta-schwa, I kind of have to, do it. So any word that has two S's in it, the first S will be long S, like side-by-side S's, not like its own thing. Side-by-side S's, yes. And so this is not going to be called the long S because it needs to be its own thing. So it's going to be called the longs, spelled L-O-N-G, long S, S. And so back to the insular G. What is the insular G's purpose? I mean, if it does the yog and the G sounds, why would we need it? Well, it's going to be the long S of G. So anytime there was a double G or a double yog, the first one of those would be the insular G. So in order to have itself in its spelling, it's going to be called chi or gi. Just put the spelling on screen. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that is the spelling of it because it's not going to be called insular G. It's got to have itself in the spelling. So there you go. I hope you guys are enjoying. Just remember, these letters are going to get a lot crazier in the end, so just stay tuned, all right? Just trust me. Now let's begin doing all of these weird last letters. This is Kaputaka, or more formally known as Kaputaka. So what this sound makes is a complete clearing of the throat, like Kaputaka, something like that. Me and a friend made this back in high school, and I paid homage to it in my last video where I put it in there, and now it's obviously in this one. Now, some people in my comments in the last one said this letter might exist, like the sound, and like it probably does, but this one's like the harshest sound you could think of, right? I know a lot of Arab countries or just countries in general use like a, more of the throat, but here you go. This one is an intense one. Let's skip around to this one right here. So this letter is called the what? So this sound makes kind of a chirping sound. It's a Have you ever done that before? I find myself just like fidgeting with my mouth and doing that sound sometimes. However, this is pronounced with another letter in its name, the la. So the way you say the letter itself is, I had to do some sort of cross-referencing of all these letters and combine each other in some way. So this is how you spell the letter. Never use it, please. Don't use it, but it's here. Let's get to some semi-normal ones, shall we? Like, I need a break. This here is the H bar from the Maltese script. And the sound it makes is similar to the H, but it's more further back in the throat. How H is kind of pretty simple in the mouth, but the H bar is more from the throat, like a, but not sort of a, but a, kind of like a villager sound, like a huh, huh. And so in order to spell this letter, instead of calling it H bar, it needs itself in the name, so it's called the H. So it's like H, but with a at the end, at the beginning of it. Next up is the ang. The ang primarily comes from the International Phonetic Alphabet, but it also was used in like Old English and some other random languages as well. And so this sound makes the ng sound, as in ng. So when you're spelling running, you'd use the ang at the end of it. And in order to spell this letter, it is e-ang. Or E-N-G, I guess. But this letter is actually extremely useful because why write N-G when there could just be a letter for I mean, N-G kind of makes sense. I mean, it's like not like a CH sound, but it's still unique enough to where it needs its own letter. Now this one is my personal favorite I've made. This is called the full, and it makes the sound. When would you ever use it? I don't know, but its design is based off of a nose. I think it's pretty genius. I don't think this would be considered a vowel because technically it doesn't use the mouth. However, I don't know, I feel a vowel-y presence from it, I feel like it's a vowel, but it's not. So that gets me into another subject. In this whole alphabet, there is a lot of random sounds that aren't really vowels or consonants. Essentially, a consonant is just what a vowel isn't, but from the mouth. And so anything that is said here that doesn't involve the mouth is not a consonant or a vowel. So what is it? Well, I'm creating my own third rank of sounds called complexities. So the la and then this full would technically be complexities. They are not consonants or vowels. So anything that here that does not involve the mouth or the tongue is a complexity. You're welcome. Next up, we have the so this makes the and the sound, depending on if it's short or long. In my last video, I called it a vowel, and after more research, it's technically not. but we're still gonna call it a vowel. It's an exception to the rule. I feel like isn't a consonant. That doesn't make literally any sense. It's completely open-mouthed. It's technically more closer to a vowel than a consonant. And it's not a complexity because it uses the mouth and throat. So I call it a vowel. It's spelled H. So there you go. Very useful letter. It's a breathing letter, and I think everyone is going to use it. Our next letter here is the T. It makes the sound. Now, I would call this a consonant personally. It could technically be on the fence of complexity. I mean, technically teeth is from the mouth, but like nothing, I would call it a consonant, you know? This is a very useful letter and also one of my favorites. I used it in my thumbnails in my last video and it's a really great design. I love it. It's designed off of a tooth and like the one is I don't know the names of teeth, but they look like teeth. Up next, we got the go, and it makes the sound, you know? When you go, like a Minecraft picking up sound, this is the letter for it. I said this was the most useful letter before, and it is the most useful letter in all of existence. Fight me. Our last semi-normal one on the list is going to be this one. This is the whistle, pronounced whistle, like a whistle, but with a literal whistle in there. I think we've needed a letter for forever. And I would also technically call this a vowel more than a consonant. It's not a complexity. I'd call it a vowel. One form being and the other being, depending on if you're sucking in or blowing out. Also maybe depending on the lip variations. I can make a whole video covering it. I didn't go too far into it in depth in my notes, so it's just a whistle sound. It's just a whistle letter. Now we get to probably the most insane ones, but these are taken from other languages that aren't really letters, but they kind of are. This is the multi-ocular O from the abandoned Cyrillic script. So this specific letter O was used once in a written copy from the Book of Psalms in like 1429, where they were quoting something about many-eyed seraphim. And since normally these O's just look like an O with a dot, this one's pretty out of the ordinary. It's used once ever in history, like in the actual Cyrillic script, and I'm pretty sure the guy was just trolling. If you've never seen a biblically accurate seraphim, they kind of look insane. So this letter kind of encapsulates that into itself. It's technically just a Cyrillic O, but a variant of it. So it makes the same sound as the Cyrillic O, which is the O sound, kind of like that. So in the word or aura, you get rid of the R, it's the O sound. It's kind of like O, but like fancier. And so if you spelled aura, you would use this letter. And its lowercase counterpart, I kind of just took from the double version. I think it's the binocular one. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong on screen, but this is just a different Cyrillic O variant that I used as the lowercase version. I saw this in a video and I knew I wanted it in my alphabet. Like half the reason I made a part 2 wasn't because the video blew up, the first one, like thank you guys for that, but it was because I saw this and I wanted it in the alphabet. So I made this whole thing. Coming up next is a blast from the past. You probably saw this letter somewhere in like a Discord chat or something back in like 2020. My handwriting looks awful for it, but this is Diana. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'll put the pronunciation on screen, but this is from the Sinhalese script. So it makes the G sound. Not the D sound like D. You take your tongue and instead of putting it to like the front, you know, the teeth of your mouth, you put it to the roof of your mouth. So instead of D, it's D. Pretty nice. I think this is a very useful letter. If you couldn't tell how immature I am, I added it because it looks like Among Us. Yes, click off the video, whatever. I love this letter. I love it, all right? I don't care. Yeah, no, but whatever you say. Coming up next is the last normal symbol on this list. This is the tsu from the Japanese, specifically the katakana syllabary. Now this letter makes the ts sound, not just ts, but tsi with like a very weird marking. Ts is what it says. And so in order to put this thing into its own spelling, I have called it the tsu. You know, instead of just tsu, it's the tsu because its name doesn't even like correlate what it is because it's a U and then the I is in the actual pronunciation, but the U is in the spelling. So it's the tsu. It's on screen, all right? You'll see it. Also the Diana one, it's spelled with the Diana instead of the DA, you know? Now, if you couldn't tell from these last 3 ones, they have been kind of ones that like are memey or they're just kind of cool or stupid, you know? But this next one, you're gonna love it, all right? I promise. I've moved these to give myself more space to write it. Let's see how long it takes for me to write it. There's still a lowercase variant, by the way. So this is the byung from the Chinese language. Its only purpose is to be used in a name for noodles, the byang byang mian, which is byang byang noodles. So you have to use this thing twice in the spelling of the name. It was originally used back in the day as like an advertising thing. I mean, forever ago. They combined a bunch of Chinese symbols to make this big byang symbol. And so I'm adding it as a letter that you'll have to write out if you ever spell a word with this letter in it. So in order to put it in its own name, this is called the byangso, spelling on screen. This is a symbol I saw in like meme videos or whatever. And people were talking about how it's like one of the hardest Chinese symbols to know and write. And now it's in the Zhe de Shuo. You're welcome. Anyways, for our last letter, I have the most insane one yet, guys. You have been waiting this long. Thank you for watching this. Here's the last one. So this, my friends, is the space character, spelled S-P-A-C-E space character C-H-A-R-A-C-T-E-R. Space character. If you didn't know, Unicode is the basic symbol system that every computer or device uses. Like a lot of these symbols that I used, like the stole, are in Unicode, and you can type it on your keyboard right now if you know the code for it in Unicode. And the space is a Unicode symbol. It is technically a character according to your computer's hardware, or your phone's hardware. And so the uppercase variant is your indent. When you hit the tab key on a keyboard, big indent for your paragraph. That is the uppercase variant. And the lowercase variant is just your average space in between any word. So if you're ever writing the Zhe de Shuo, how would you write the space? Well, you do it this way. Big box, okay? You don't gotta write like a lowercase and uppercase box. It's just a box. It's there to show you that there is a space at the end. Anyways, guys, it's time to sing the Zhe de Shuo song. Yeah.